Atheism 101, next on Atheist Viewpoint.
Hi, and welcome to the Atheist Viewpoint. I'm your co-host, Ron Barrier.
And I'm Dennis Horvitz.
And today, we're going to talk about atheism. Because, a lot of times we spend on this show decimating religious concepts. But rather, we're going to take the next 22, 25 minutes or so to briefly discuss what is atheism. And Dennis, I think you'll agree with me. Now, I like, was it George Smith who wrote The Case Against God?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I think he came up with one of the explanations that at least I feel is a good one, is that atheism is not a philosophy, but rather a template with which to build a rational philosophical view free of theism.
Well, atheism itself is simply a philosophical position in regard to belief. I don't think that it's. I don't consider it a.
In other words, it's a philosophical starting point.
Yeah. I mean, it's just simply that. Just by definition, it's not a philosophy. I don't think, in the sense of
like
cynicism in the traditional Greek sense, or skepticism. It's not. Yes, there have been writings on atheist thought and stuff and that kind of thing, but it's actually just a very simple thing in and of itself.
Well, the dictionary. If anybody opens up any dictionary and looks up the word atheism, they're going to find atheist is a person who denies the existence of God, or atheism, a philosophy that denies the existence of God.
Right.
I've never really agreed with that definition because that definition posits that a God exists to begin with that can be denied.
I think
I think what they should have said was maybe denies the existence of a God or gods.
Well, first of all, I disagree with that definition.
What, in the dictionary?
In the dictionary, in this sense, while there may be atheists who do deny the existence of God, I consider the very basic minimal definition that is simply lack of belief in God.
Right, lack of theism, lack of a belief in God. Okay.
There may be atheists who, well, I know that there are atheists who believe there are no gods, or who say there are no gods.
I'm one of them. All right.
I don't.
But again, I can only think that.
Right. I just don't happen to think it's a necessary position. I mean, I just don't think. In other words, without arguing against that position, I just don't think it's not necessary for me, because the lack of belief in God basically covers it.
Yeah, it's like you're dumping it overboard.
I just don't happen to, for whatever reason, I just don't happen to believe in gods.
So see, even over the word atheism, we can have disagreements.
Right.
But that's not the point. The point is we have maybe slight disagreements, semantics and other things. But the fact is that Dennis and I both begin from the position of essentially supernaturalism has no basis.
Right. The universe is not explainable. The scientific evidence, rational thought, logic, do not support a supernatural explanation for the universe.
Right. And what does supernatural mean to you?
Well,
briefly,
above and beyond the natural.
Okay. And I agree with you. Supernatural, what they say as well, it's we have no natural explanation, so it must be something beyond nature.
Right.
But yet the question becomes, and science has shown us, that we know very little about nature.
Well,
We know so little about nature that to put a a border on it is really a leap of faith. That to say that nature ends and then there's something beyond that,
Well, yeah.
that to me, that's an impossible conclusion.
We may know very little about nature compared to what there is to be ultimately is to be known.
Right.
But using science as an explanation based on what we learn constantly certainly is more accurate and more logical and sane and produces ultimately better results than just simply saying God did it.
Right. It delivers.
Or,
It delivers
or
the good.
evil spirits or something like that.
Mhm.
And scientists can and have been wrong. I heard that one read source at some time that science is wrong 50% of the time. I don't know if that's true, but even if it was right 25% of the time, it's self-correcting.
Well, that's the point. I mean, you can even take that. You might even take that percentage higher. But
Yeah.
the fact is that unlike supernaturalism,
Right.
science encourages doubt and
Yes.
skepticism about its principles and its theories.
That's right. That's right.
And if you can test them, and if you can do that, and if you find something different, well, then
And
they're ready to change their minds.
it is heartless and unsentimental, too. I mean, if you ain't got the goods, you ain't got the goods. It's like
Yes.
it's like, you know, you could be working on a particular project for 40 years and put your money and your heart and soul and your, pardon the expression, and your life into it, only to have some 24-year-old grad student from Caltech completely upset it by stumbling across something while looking for something else.
Right.
And your career has just gone down the tubes. But it is what it is. It's what's testable.
Yes.
That's all it is.
I mean, what 30 years ago, or even before the Hubble, we didn't really understand what was going on there. The Hubble telescope has brought us more of an understanding about not only our immediate neighborhood,
Right.
but at the utter vastness and complexity
Right.
and violence of the universe, and we're still learning about it.
It's incredible more. I mean, they just learn more and more every day. You know, I constantly see people claiming that they've disproven the theory of evolution.
I'd like to know who they are.
Well, they believe what they want to believe, but from a scientific concept or perspective, number one, even if they could disprove evolution, that wouldn't make the default answer that God did it.
No.
And what I suspect is they should continue. I mean, science itself is self-correcting. It's constant questioning. And what I suspect is, not only suspect, but I hope that our current understanding of the universe will be considered quaint in 100, in 1,000 years. It should be. If science does its job,
Right.
whatever we may think now should be outlandishly outdated, at some point.
Yes.
And that I don't think that the theory of evolution, for instance, will be proven wrong. I think what will happen is that they'll come along with a better explanation, and that it will be subsumed by that better explanation, in the same sense that Newtonian physics has been subsumed by a larger understanding of physics, including quantum physics.
Well, and to the people listening, what does all this have to do with atheism? Well, atheism, we do appreciate the scientific method. We do appreciate a rational, logical, non-assuming tact in accumulating knowledge. And it's funny, I had a believer one time say to me, "Oh, I don't like science because it's constantly changing." That's the beauty.
That's the point.
Yes.
It's not only the beauty, it's the point.
to change, right?
Right.
Even science evolves. Even religion evolves, from
absolutely,
what it was.
absolutely. It just turns out that when I've been researching and exploring various things, I've come to a greater understanding, certainly, of the history of religion. And most people who profess a religion have no clue as to how, and I'm referring specifically to Christianity, but this applies to Judaism and Islam, and I'm sure others too. that it's really canonized opinion, and that they're usually it's one of the main misunderstandings of Christianity, for instance, is that it's that there's this linear progression that goes back in time, one school of thought, and that all these other denominations kind of branched off. And in fact, it's almost just the opposite, that within the first 300 years following the start of Christianity, there were hundreds, if not thousands, of different types of Christianity, and basically it was congealed under the,
well, that's what Constantine did
yeah.
One day. He
Right,
said
but it began,
we had to put this together, have a cohesive religion, and thus the birth of Christianity as the state faith.
Yes, and as we know it.
And
but even then, he wasn't really completely successful with it, because these other denominations went on and on,
But an interesting point about what you said about the linear aspect. Vine Deloria, an Indian philosopher, in his book God is Red, had an argument about Christianity with that. He says, you look at their holy books, and human history is linear. There's a beginning, and it's going to follow a specific path, and it's going to end the way they want it to end.
Right.
And I agree with him. History is exponential. History comes about from so many different areas. Well,
and all at once.
Well, it's like evolution.
Right.
I think a lot of believers think that evolution is a scientific field. It is in a way, but it's really a mosaic that came from all the various scientific disciplines when you started looking at the bigger picture.
Well, I think
so. It's a collection of disciplines.
It's a part, yeah, and it's a part of a mosaic, and being what it is, and I think evolution, the theory of evolution, and the development, what they call the modern synthesis of evolution, and beyond the modern synthesis of evolution, is what it is, because it drew upon these other scientific disciplines. So it is and is of a mosaic, but
we've been talking about science, and the reason being is that essentially atheism, at least philosophically, follows this naturalistic, materialistic, not materialism as greed, but materialism as a philosophy.
Right.
That reality, as we know it, is a physical absolute, as far as we can figure it out.
This is it, basically. This is it.
Yes. So that's what we mean by embracing materialism over supernaturalism.
Well, people think that materialism, that people accept the
well, that's what the churches do. They engage in materialism.
The materialism.
They're looking for your money. They're looking
for,
and
they try to portray atheists and other materialists as people who are simply preoccupied with material things and with gain to the expense of morality or ethics and feeling, which of course is silly.
Yeah,
nonsense.
Of course it's silly. In fact, if anything, I would think, as we've spoken a couple of shows, the position of the church in the marriage equality issue is one of immorality, as far as we're concerned. So atheism, I think a lot of atheists, and Dennis, if you would chime in, while atheism itself is not a philosophy, it's a starting point, philosophical starting point.
Yeah.
Most embrace humanistic views.
Yes, I would say humanism would probably be a better description of it.
Right. So, I mean, if people are looking for, like, what are atheists, it's not necessarily what we believe, but what we think and how we live. I think if they looked at the Humanist Manifesto and looked at humanism, a lot of those values are exactly what we share.
I don't know.
Atheists, agnostic, humanists, non-believers basically are all humanists in one form or another.
Right, and I'm sure you've gotten this, and I know I'm asked this every now and then. Well, about, say, American atheists or some of the other atheists with them affiliated with. Why form a group based around what you don't believe?
Well, that's because we're tired of having them use the government to shove what they believe down our throats.
Right.
We're an activist organization.
That's right.
You know,
We're a civil rights organization.
yes,
And not only that, but the ironic thing is that everything that we campaign for and push in terms of the rights, our rights as atheists, everybody else benefits from.
absolutely.
And for instance, the very important issue of separation of church and state, I know you've said this before, and I've said this before hundreds of times. It is not by itself. It's not an atheist issue.
No.
It's that we're the ones that are carrying it, and it's you know, and there are, I mean, I know for a fact that there are very religious people that do support the separation of church and state, but we're just, you know,
And there are believers who do.
yeah,
But where we separate ourselves from them is something like the Pledge of Allegiance.
Right.
We don't want under God in there.
right,
Okay, that should be separated. The God and the Pledge of Allegiance is the Knights of Columbus God, a Roman Catholic God. Why is the government of the United States promoting a Roman Catholic God?
because there are Catholic voters.
You know, it believes me, and yet, of course, what galls me now is that the Knights of Columbus, who after they've gotten their God shoved down everyone's throat, needed an exemption in the marriage equality law in New York, so that they don't have to open up their catering halls to gay people,
Yeah, yeah.
which is sad. It really is pathetic. In fact, I encourage no one to, to use a Knights of Columbus catering hall, or for that matter, the Orthodox Jewish catering halls, because they're the same. They have the same view. They
Yeah.
might as well tack on the outside. Irish not welcome here, atheists
Right.
not welcome here, gay people, black people not welcome
Right.
here. It's all the same thing.
Right,
They
but
don't
they're-
understand this.
You know what? They have the right to, you know, to discriminate against anybody they want, but
Yes,
we don't have to patronize them.
you don't have to patronize them, and they shouldn't be accepting federal dollars.
Right, right.
You know, if they did that, at least they
Well,
were honest.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where that would come in as far as catering halls getting federal money.
Well, the Knights of here's what bothers me about the Knights of Columbus. The catering hall is a secular business.
Yes,
Secular businesses cannot discriminate,
right.
but they're getting it because it's a secular business run by a religious organization.
Yes, yeah, right,
You know,
right.
I can see if they didn't want to allow gays to be members in their group. Okay,
Right.
that's their religious group.
Right,
I can stand and agree with that.
yeah,
But to have a secular business, and, you know, the Orthodox Jews have a secular catering hall, and to discriminate against American citizens from utilizing their secular business, that's where I have a problem.
right.
You know,
Yeah, I can't say that I'm not disagreeing with you, but
it's an issue.
yeah, I need to do more thinking about it just to kind of understand it.
Yeah, well, we'll bring it up. I'm sure over the course of time now, as the marriage equality law comes into effect, we may start seeing some issues which we will discuss.
Right. Well,
You know.
I mean, it is a civil rights issue, and I know that in the 60s, in 1964, I think the passage of the Civil Rights Act was based, at least in part, on the Interstate Commerce Commission, the Interstate Commerce Act of 1887, which meant that basically if you were open for business anywhere, and you accepted business from out of state, or potentially accepted business from out of state, then you were basically conducting interstate commerce, and therefore you could not discriminate against people because of their color. So maybe it would become under that. I don't know, but
Atheist values. For me, personally, I mean, I value the mental ability to doubt.
yeah,
You know, I value the mental capacity to question, to ask, how did this work? Well, you know, how do you come to this conclusion? Why did you come to this conclusion? An example, and of course this is a crazy one, but anyway, saints in the Catholic religion. Why is it that only dead Catholics, after they die, it can be proven that they cured a living Catholic?
yeah, perform a miracle.
You know, Is it that dead Catholics, when they die, um, achieve medical knowledge in the hereafter and then come back and
Oh.
apply that medical knowledge to a specific? And it's only a Catholic, by the way.
Right.
You've never seen miracles. You ever seen cross-denominational miracles? Or like Catholic demons possess Jews, or
Yeah, or situations like where the miracle of Fatima, the Virgin appeared only to people that already believed.
yes.
If she really wanted to make an impact, she would have shown up in India,
Oh, I think that would have been fantastic.
you know, and made thousands of Hindus or Sikhs convert, you know.
That, that's correct. If you look closely at any one of these miracle stories,
Yeah,
it always happens to those who are already predisposed to that mindset.
and the catalysts are usually children, you know, because they're innocent and
Yes,
it's a,
and
you know,
uneducated.
uneducated.
Yeah. Which I guess falls in line now with this country using words like intellectual and elite as pejoratives.
You don't see too many Nobel Prize winners in physics all of a sudden having visions and delivering messages from saints or God.
No, no. When was the last
Yeah.
scientist you saw that was possessed?
It was probably someone whose car was being towed away. That'd be repossessed.
But you're right. It's never like in intelligent people or
Sane people.
sane people who are taken up with this kind of I don't know, behavior or whatever it is, thought process.
Right.
So
But you know what? Even extremely respected and learned religious scholars don't come up with this stuff. You're never going to see you're never going to see somebody say who some Monsignor, for instance, who works in the Vatican Library and who knows his you know who is very very well read, or some really high person high up in the intelligentsia of any religion, coming out and claiming to have seen the Virgin Mary or the face of Jesus in a pizza. You know, you
Yeah,
never, you know, even amongst the religious, amongst the educated, you
they kind
never
of avoid that stuff.
you never do it. You know, you never see it.
Mhm.
And because I think you know there's a great quote about what religion does for, how religion affects certain people. I think for the people it's a comfort, for the wise it's ridiculous or unnecessary, and for the rulers it's useful. And I'm getting this all wrong, by the way. There is you know, Google it, look it up on the, you know. But that's basically the idea.
You know, and I've mentioned it a couple of times before. One of my favorite atheist writers was the 19th century British fellow Chapman Cohen,
Mhm.
and he always had, whenever he took it upon himself to write upon a topic of the religious or their behavior, he was cogent. He was very clear and plain spoken, and you could really understand a lot about atheism. In fact, you can get the Chapman Cohen's essays on free thinking from American Atheists, and I strongly recommend the 2-volume set. He does one, and in fact, I might bring it in. We should probably do an article about a show about it one day about the clergy, how he goes, they may be very nice people, but when you look closely, they operate on a moral level that's way below the civilized human being.
Yeah.
And when he explains it, it makes a lot of sense. And maybe we will discuss that particular essay.
Yeah, I would go so far as to say, well, I certainly disagree with clergy.
Yes.
I'm reluctant to just simply demonize them as human beings. You know what I'm saying? I'm still of the position, even with knowing what I know about sexual abuse of children within the various religious denominations. As misguided as I may think they are, I still believe that most people go into the clergy for the best of intentions.
I think so too.
Yeah.
We're down to our last minute. Just a quick little story. A few years ago, American Atheists protested the Promise Keepers.
Mhm.
And at one point during the protest, we had a priest come over and stand with us.
Mhm.
And I asked him why. And he said, because I agree with you about Promise Keepers. I said, maybe, and that's good. However, I'm uncomfortable with you standing here next to me while you have that collar on, because tomorrow, because it was a Saturday, tomorrow you're going to go up and teach from the very same book
Yeah.
that they believe in.
Yeah.
So if you want to take off the collar, then you're welcome to stay.
Yeah.
And he left.
Yeah.
I got heat from some atheists about that.
Yeah.
You know, but I was calling them out, man. You want to walk the walk? You know, talk the talk. We're down to our last half minute here or so. Once again, this is the Atheist Viewpoint, and please visit the American Atheist website, www.atheist.org.
And send in your comments too, by the way.
Yes.
You know,
Send in your comments if you have questions or comments about the show. Anything we said, you know, we'd be more than happy to you know, address them with you. We also have a newsletter that goes out on a regular basis. We have the American Atheist magazine, and if you check the website, we have atheist groups.
No God blog.
No God blog, but we also have atheist groups holding various events around the country at any given time. So, you know, if you're a non-believer, if you're trying to come to grips with your not failure, but your success at seeing through the cloud of religious faith, come to the American Atheist website. See if there's anything going on in your neighborhood.
Tell your friends.
Yeah, tell your friends. And again, if you have questions, if you're doubting your faith, you know, you go to church, you're saying why, please feel free to write to the Atheist Viewpoint in care of Dennis Horvitz or myself, Ron Barrier, and we'd be more than happy to at least try and address them the best way possible, or get somebody
Yeah.
who can if we
Put you in the
can't.
right direction.
Right. I mean, one thing as atheists, you always realize that you don't know everything,
Right.
okay? So don't guess, don't assume, but
Right.
find out from somebody who might know. Go to an expert.
Right.
You know, if a person, a Catholic, a believer comes to you and says, what about evolution? Tell them to go see a scientist. You're not that's what I tell them. I'm not a scientist.
Right.
I said, do I accept it? Yes, but I'm not a scientist. So we are on the verge now of down to the last few seconds. So on behalf of Dennis, myself, Ron Barry, and the American Atheist, and the Atheist Viewpoint, we will see you next week.
Bye-bye.